let's get this going. So my name is Andreas Bergstedt. I work for the Global Black Belt organization at Microsoft. I belong to the EMEA region, and that is my my focus. My speciality, or my main product focus at Microsoft, is cloud scale analytics, and more specifically Synapse Analytics. I'm involved in migrations from on-prem, other cloud providers, appliance migrations, and that sort of thing. Right, let's get started. So we're running, or we're going to go through just a brief overview of the modern data estate and where Microsoft is going with Synapse Analytics and the cloud enterprise data warehousing program. We're going to step into then a quick overview of Synapse Analytics, followed by a quick couple of slides discussing the Spark clusters in Synapse Analytics. We're going to look at Power BI and the broader ecosystem, and then step through a demo, and then open up for Q&A. So let's get started. So if we look at the modern data platform, or what sort of cloud data platforms look like, so they normally sit in four pillars. They're the ingest pillar, which is your orchestration, all your automation, your monitoring, and that sort of thing. You have your storage pillar. So for data lakes, this is in cloud analytics, this is your big data store. Then obviously your analytics engine, where you run your prep, training of your models, and then your model and serve, where you share or publish your data sets out and serve them to your reporting analytics tool, right? Then for this, or where there's been a lot of movement recently, is in the data lake space or in the storage tier. There's been a lot of investment and movement lately to move towards data lakes for cloud scale analytics, and that's largely focused, or the reason for that is, that there's some benefits. And one of the main benefits is flexibility, where obviously you get the ability to choose whatever tools you prefer to work. A data lake is just a storage platform, and you can choose how you want to work with that. The other major benefit is that there's no vendor lock-in. You got full data sovereignty, you got control over your data. You can move it to wherever you want to if you don't like the one storage option, or let's say, practical example, you're building a data lake on ADLS Gen 1 or blob storage, and then up comes ADLS Gen 2 that provides hierarchical namespaces, access control, and a lot more better functionality. You can move across. You can literally lift your blob storage account and then move all the data into the next technology. So you can move it wherever you want. Also, you're not bounded by a specific technology or tool. You're not, with a data lake, obviously compute is completely segregated from the data and the storage. And the major benefit of this is obviously that there's no more migrations. So you can develop your data lake architecture, your strategy, move it to the cloud, or move your data and process your data in the cloud, and then you don't have to particularly care about technology migrations or anything like that. Right, and obviously enter Synapse Analytics. So with the data lake concept in mind, right? So if we look at enterprise data lakes and enterprise data warehousing, they've always been two separate disciplines. You have your data science tier, where you work with a lot of experimentation. You look at trying to discover and unlock value in your data, and you sort of work structured and semi-structured, but it's very free-flowing and open, but focused towards science persona, right? And then you have your data engineering side, which predominantly has been driven by relational data warehouses, where there's sort of proven security and reliability. You get dependable results, data structured, it's easy to manage, right? Now, one thing that has always been a challenge is that it's always been either you're a data scientist and you work with big data, or you're a data engineer and you work with business data and in relational data. So it's always been or, never an and, right? Now, with Azure, we bring in this together under one umbrella, because obviously Azure has data warehousing capability, and it has data lake and big data capability. But now with Synapse Analytics, we're answering this in a unified way. So Synapse Analytics brings the two, data science world and the data engineering world together, and offers, a common set of tools and services that builds up or makes up the enterprise data lake layer, and enables businesses and people to democratize various personas and disciplines, right? And also, besides supporting data engineers and data scientists, it also supports your not necessarily high technical data citizens, but your sort of power users and your normal business analysts that are able to write simple SQL queries and also be able to create Power BI reports very simply against the ecosystem. Now, with Synapse Analytics, when we talk about Synapse, we like to frame it as part of a larger ecosystem. And we must remember that it's part. Azure is a larger ecosystem. There are peripheral services that are tightly coupled. We have Azure Active Directory that provides your identity management and authorization, access and authorization and identity management. We've got machine learning services that obviously provide or is tightly integrated into Synapse Analytics, allowing you to directly integrate or run scoring in your SQL workloads, for instance. Also, Power BI is directly or tightly integrated with Synapse Analytics, and we'll go into that more later, as well as other products like Datashare. Now, when we think about Synapse Analytics as a sort of a product and what the value it brings, so it truly is a game changer, and it delivers limitless scale or virtually limitless scale, allowing you to deliver insights from all your data across your data warehouses, your big data analytics systems and stores, and this is obviously at very high performance speed. Also with Synapse Analytics, your data professionals can query both your relational and non-relational data at ease, at petabyte scale, using familiar tools and languages like Python or PySpark and SQL, etc. Also, you unlock, or we've deeply integrated with Power BI and machine learning services, and that obviously greatly expands discovery of insights from your data and allows you to apply machine learning models to all your data assets. And then with the workspace we provided, or with Synapse Analytics, we provided a unified experience for data prep, data management, and data warehousing, as well as build big data and AI tasks, where your data engineers and scientists can work either code-free or low-code, no-code, using sort of a visual plane or visual workspace. And in the same environment, you can also manage your pipelines, your transformations, your ELT packages, and all of that. And you can easily spin up proof of concepts or new environments within the workspace, or provision new workspaces. The other thing that's also important that we bring is the unmatched security of Azure. So we have some of the most advanced security and privacy features on the market, and these are naturally built into the fabric of Azure and in effect into Azure Synapse Analytics. And some of these are like our advanced threat protection. You look at row-level security, all of those things. It all sort of fits in. And unlike some of our competitors or some of the other vendors on the market, this is all standard with the platform, and we don't obviously expect you to take a higher compute tier or anything like that to be able to leverage the security. Right. If we look at performance, so this is a marketing slide, so I'm not going to focus too much of it. If you're interested in reading up on comparative performance or price performance, you can look at or search up the TPCH benchmark comparison by GigaOM. So that was a study commissioned in January of 2019. And yeah, so if we look at Synapse, or the roadmap of Synapse, we must look at sort of where it's come from. So I guess it started in 2018, in November 2018, when SQL Data Warehouse got rebranded into Synapse Analytics, and then in brackets formerly SQL Data Warehouse. And along that paradigm back in 2019, the sort of Synapse Analytics, the actual workspaces and the studio started to come to fruition. And in November last year, it became or entered into preview. So obviously, the Synapse Analytics contains the provision, the SQL, both on demand and provisioned, the Synapse Spark pools, the studio experience, which we'll go through in the demo, and pipelines and orchestration, right? What's interesting in terms of the feature set, so if we look at current generation data warehouse or Synapse data warehouse, as it stands today, some of the more interesting features that are generally available are the results at caching the materialized views. We've got ordered column store, JSON support. There's obviously you can we have a data tool support for it. You can do row level security. Private link is a new GA feature. And then if we go and we look at the current Synapse Studio preview features that are out there, so obviously the Studio is in public preview. We've got Synapse Link, which is an HTAP connector. We'll go into that in more detail later. SQL Serverless, and also Datashare is integrated into Synapse Analytics. The other thing that's also sitting in public preview is the data stream ingestion. So you're able to effectively run a stream analytics workload within Synapse or within the workspace. That enables you to consume your hot path. The other thing, we've got native machine learning or scoring models, so you can run scoring as a function by calling it a data model or a machine learning data model in your native SQL. There's some additional wizards, bulk load wizards that come up. A new feature, or the last three on this list, or four, is actually the newest feature, so the Power BI Performance Accelerator, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Merge support, so unlike or for those that have worked with SQL Data Warehouse in the past, or PDW or APS, they've migrated from store procedures that were running a lot of merge code. Previously, they've gone through the frustration of rewriting merge statements to building sort of upsert table constructions. So we now support merge statements. There's a couple of tricks to it, but it related to data distribution, but merge statements are supported. Another new feature that is in public preview is also the data CDM support in the data flows. So you're able to use a CDM data set as a source or sink, and also Synapse Spark also has a preview of the CDM connector. So you're able to use the CDM data store or data set as a source for a data frame, for instance. Cool. In terms of what's happening, so we're obviously moving towards our general availability release that is expected to happen at the end of this year. And that then brings the preview functionality into sort of general availability. What that also means is that we're going to naturally move our existing Synapse data warehouse customers into the Synapse workspaces. Cool. And then if we look at Synapse Analytics, so it is truly a unified experience. We've integrated everything into the studio, be that your runtime integration, be it the management, be it monitoring and security. We've got the data runtimes. We got our provisioned SQL or SQL pools. We got our on-demand SQL, and then we have obviously the Spark clusters, and all of this is obviously underpinned by storage in ADLS Gen 2. Right. So other periphery or other things that have come to fruition over the last couple of months is there's been a lot of investment in the Azure Advisor. So we're starting to, or we're integrating natively with Advisor. So if you're working in the portal, you're looking at your Synapse workspace in the portal, the Advisor pane should or will sort of bring up where you got data skews. So your hash distribution in your provisioned data warehouse is not correct. Yeah, cache misses, looks at TMTB contention, etc., etc. So there's a lot of automation and sort of bot services that are popping up in the background where we're integrating or deeply integrating with, right? So the other thing I want to go through is obviously the Spark pools. So Spark clusters are new for Synapse Analytics, and this is driven by the open source version of Spark. And the main thinking behind this is just to provide a common open source standard and sort of ensure that we're not limiting the people or data scientists or data engineers capability of interacting with Synapse Analytics. So it's obviously the reason for Spark is because it's got a large data following. We pre-installed the entire Anacondas library as well as other relevant data source or data science libraries to enable both visual supports in sort of in the notebooks and also being able to run machine learning models and do some deep learning, but Spark is definitely a game changer for us. And then if we look at how it all sort of fits together, so obviously the Studio gives the sort of the SaaS feel to the data warehouse, where code-free and sort of low-code experience with a sort of a web-based IDE. And if we look at the languages we support, so we support most popular development languages. It does say R, even though R is not selectable yet in notebooks. We support pretty much all the major data science and data engineering languages. In terms of our form factors, again, we got the SQL runtime with both provisioned and on-demand, and then obviously the Spark, the Spark runtimes. And then obviously we have a common meta store, and that's something that we'll touch a bit on later or just now. But we basically allow you to persist. So, for instance, a Hive table in Spark, and then query that with SQL. So, as we see here, we create a Hive table using a Parquet store, and then in here we're running an on-demand querying using SQL to query a Hive table. And this is, this kind of is important because it sort of doesn't limit, because there's a common meta store. We don't necessarily exclude any specific data engineering language or exploratory language in terms of be it SQL, be it Python or Scala or R or whatever. The other thing that's interesting about the Spark pools is that you can rapidly deploy test and UAT environments, where you can take a snapshot and you can create a new instance, a new Spark pool from that specific snapshot, and then have a point-in-time replica or copy of your data warehouse that you can run regression or other tests on. Cool. And also, we talked, or I said, Power BI was tightly integrated. So obviously, the direct query mode for Power BI works phenomenally. We're able to leverage result set cache in Synapse to make sure that common queries from Power BI stays in memory. There's also the predictive queries there, the Power BI predicted cache as well. That's now in public preview, where Synapse will remember a set of direct queries or the most common direct queries from Synapse, and then materialize those as materialized views in the back end, and then serving them up, in sort of storing or caching as much as possible in memory. The other feature set that is interesting to talk about is the CDM, or the Common Data Model. So this slide is a little bit out of date, but it was the only one I had. But basically, there is all the work that's going on at the moment with the industry data workbench, where you're able to basically create a meta store or a specific industry verticals data warehouse, pick and choose objects within that, and then store them in a common data model. And then obviously the common data model is tightly integrated with Synapse. You're able to read out of it. You're able to write to and create new common data models in your common data store. And this the idea behind it is to have a meta model that describes all sort of data assets in the industry, or sorry, in your data estate. Cool. Synapse Link. So it's the first cloud-native HTAP service, and that allows you to run real-time analytical queries against your cloud-based OLTP systems. OLTP systems like MongoDB. And obviously the first one that works or that we've integrated with is Cosmos DB. And you're able to create analytical distributions or analytical data store enabled objects in Cosmos that you can then attach as a linked service in Synapse. And the power of this is that you're able to, in near real time, with about 5 to 3 minutes latency, be able to query or provide real-time dashboards or near real-time dashboards in Power BI using direct query, connecting to a virtualized data set via Synapse Analytics. Right. Another tightly integrated product is Azure Datashare. So common data share patterns today is we as a data provider, we push data out to either an SFTP server or we expose it through web API, and then we might send some data via emails, etc. Don't think anyone uses USB drives anymore, but I guess that's also common. But what Datashare provides, or the vision of Datashare, is to be able to share any data as your data assets, and regardless of the region, you can federate data and create snapshots of your data to your customers or to other third-party consumers. It allows you to set up a sort of a single pane of glass so you can monitor and manage the data that you're sharing, and you can split that up as well. So you can give different organizations on a sort of a token basis access to different data artifacts. Also, Datashare also works nicely with all current prep and data management tools. You can revoke access, or you can sort of govern with using enterprise policies. So who can access what data at what time? You can revoke data, and you can sort of manage that in a very secure way. And also in the future, when data catalog Gen 2 comes around, your lineage should also, and your governance policies there should also integrate. Another interesting part, Datashare also provides a monetization interface. So if you're an industry data provider, you can use Datashare to provide data monetization and sort of provide a sort of an egress charge and sort of storage data size and consumption storage model. Right. I think that's enough of slides, and let's move on to the demo. So I want to go through the workspace and sort of show what the workspace looks like. So when you land in the Synapse workspace, you're greeted with a welcome screen. We've got our sort of areas where we can click through. So if we look at data, for instance, we're able to access our databases within the workspace. So we can see our provisioned Synapse pool workspace. We're also able to look at things like our Spark, our Hive tables in our Spark pool, what's been created there, and we're able to query them. I want to quickly just also talk about the Spark. One thing I forgot to mention with the Spark pools. So with the Spark pools, you can create Spark clusters or custom Spark clusters, and if you have an on-premise or your own sort of data science Spark clusters that you've set up with a specific configuration or custom configuration, you can create a new Spark pool with a custom configuration using the pip freeze commands. Sorry, I'm trying to find that in the wrong place. So if we go additional settings. So you could literally import your pip freeze file, and that would obviously bring in all the custom libraries that you would have in your on-prem environment. Important thing about custom config is that it only supports the pip libraries, and it only supports the libraries that don't require an external compiler. So that's something that just needs to keep in mind. There is a bit of a limitation. You're also able to select which Apache Spark version that you want to run. Currently it's only 2.4. We're looking at going to 3.03x very shortly. Also, again, it's easy to scale your cluster. So when you provision your Spark pools, sorry, wrong button again. When you provision your Spark pools, you can easily scale them up to 200 nodes or compute nodes. So there is whatever your budget looks like. Also, there's a couple of different sort of compute sizes that you can scale between as well, and obviously that affects your price. Cool. If we work through the rest of the interface, so again, with the pools, so we have an on-demand pool that's always online and you can't switch it off, but I'll show you how that works just now. And then our traditional SQL or Synapse pools, where we're able to, again, it's the same sort of scaling environment or a SQL data warehouse where we can scale up or down as we please. Again, we can suspend the provision environments to save on compute costs when we don't need it. Another thing that's interesting, so we have a common integration runtimes. So if you're running a workload that needs to speak to a data set that's on-prem, you can, much like you do in Data Factory, you can create an on-demand or a self-hosted integration runtime to connect to your data center. Now, obviously, this is a demo environment that's shared between many people. So obviously, we're expected to see failures in this environment, right? Again, triggers. So this is the typical, your ADF triggers and the normal one, the tumbling windows, event-based triggers on storage event, etc. And again, linked services. So this is also typical with looks very familiar to ADF as it stands, right? Right. So if we go through the data as well, just want to show what the sort of the workspace experience looks like if you want to explore data. So if we take a linked or if we go through our linked objects and we go to our data lake storage account, we can literally just click through. So if we click through our campaign data, we browse those folders. Let's step in. And so we have some Parquet files here. We can just literally just right click, go select top 1000. I'm going to start with a notebook experience. So we can load this file to data frame. It's going to take a little while. I'm going to hit execute this to start at least the workload, because the Spark clusters needs to start up. So we need to select the Spark pool. And we hit that, and that's going to execute the Spark job. If we then go to the same file, so let's go to the campaign data, and we right-click there, and we go new SQL script, select top 1000. That then brings up, familiar SQL query. We're going to go ahead and just remove the file name and put in a wildcard, just to demonstrate. So we can select all the Parquet files in that folder. You can go ahead and execute that, and this should return fairly quickly. And again, this is on-demand SQL querying a data asset that's sitting on the data lake. Something else that's quite interesting is, so obviously here we return the data. The Spark cluster will come up fairly soon. If we go ahead and I'm going to bring up Management Studio. So I want to show that this is works with whatever development interface you want to work with. So I've connected in to the on-demand SQL. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my on-demand query from the studio, and I'm going to literally just go ahead and connect to my default database, a new query, a bit of latency on my machine. I can go ahead and just run that, and it will return the same result set. So again, if you, as I said before, if you want to work in the studio, The studio provides you a sort of an IDE, integrated IDE in your web browser, and you can work through that. Or you can choose whatever IDE you want to work with, if that's Management Studio, if it's a Data Explorer, whatever it may be. Cool. So if we go back to our Spark cluster still running, the other interesting, another interesting feature is obviously the JSON interpreter that exists in Synapse. So here we've got a table in our provisioned data warehouse that contains sort of CLOB data, so big JSON data sets. And using the JSON functions, we can sort of run that as a structured query. If we go ahead and let's click back to this, rather this one. So if we go ahead and we remove this, we can create a view in our on-demand SQL. So currently we're using a master database. If we create, or if we go create a new one, my on-demand DB, we can go ahead and we can create a view of this Parquet data. So create view my campaign. So I'm going to create a view called my campaign data view, and then pass in the select. I hit F5. That's then created. And if I go back to Management Studio now, and I go into the Object Explorer, and I go into my on-demand DB, and I refresh under views, we got my campaign data view there, and I can literally right-click, select top 1000, and I'm returning the campaign data. So again, whichever ID you work with, this is where persisting data, you could create a view with aggregations or filters, etc. I'm conscious that we're running out of time, so I just want to quickly step through the Develop tab. So again, if you want to work with notebooks, you can work. Hopefully, the stay load completed. Yep. Sorry. Yeah, you have the ability to work with Spark or Python or PySpark notebooks, and you can work with common languages there like Scala or PySpark or Spark SQL. There's also the ability to work in .NET for Spark in C#, so you can run .NET code within your notebooks as well. Data flows, so these are the similar to the Data Factory data flows. So this spins up Spark clusters in the background. And again, you got Power BI, so you can work natively with the Power BI workspace and data assets, Power BI data assets inside of the studio as well. Before I finish this and hand back to Mark for the Q&A, if we look at the sort of the ADF or the pipeline side, so this is again, it looks exactly like like Data Factory, with all the common Data Factory connectors allow you to connect to literally any common data sets in terms of what's available. Cool. I think I've run out of time. Mark, if you want to perhaps take back control.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so I think Mikael's got the first question for you.
Yep. The first one is it better to store your data in the data lake versus in the SQL database or inside Synapse? That is it worth the effort exporting tables to unstructured CSVs?
So it depends on the use case. I wouldn't. I'm a fan of so let's say that you have a tabular data set, so a structured data set. From a performance and sort of a compression perspective, if it's sort of stale data that needs to be stored for historical purposes, I would not use CSVs. I would use Parquet, obviously because it's compressed and it's a bit faster, and there's metadata in it. if you have data that needs to be performant in terms of you run a fortune of queries against this data, it's a data set that's accessed often, then that should probably be stored in a provisioned SQL data warehouse or in a SQL pool. So for use case, you have a marketing data set that's get queried often, or a financial data set gets queried often by lots of users, Power BI. It's probably recommended to load that into the actual Synapse instance and not store it in the data lake. But from if you need to do data science aggregations or predictions across data, or use it to train new models, then data lake is probably the better option.
Thanks.
Just extending that question slightly, I'm just interested in does the engine still shuffle data around for better performance? And I think you maybe touched upon performance, but could you theoretically have better performance within the native SQL engine than you could having an external table querying against Parquet, or is there not really anything in it?
Sorry, let me rephrase that as I heard it. So, are you asking if will you get better query performance using native SQL in data warehouse versus querying
the native storage engine?
Well, I'm going to say there's a lot of it depends.
Okay.
It's really depends on your distribution topology and how you've set up your data set. So if you've got a very large vertical Parquet data set, you might get better performance querying that, running a query against on demand against Parquet, against your data lake store, versus running that in a highly skewed environment where you either incorrectly partition that data set in provisioned SQL. But so it all depends on what your sort of data query, what your queries against your data warehouse look like, how the data is stored in the table. The same old PDW problems that came with or challenges that came with you design your storage or your distribution on purpose. So you can get really great performance, and you can also get really poor if you make mistakes.
Okay, cool. So it was interesting you talking about the integration with Azure Datashare. So recently I've been looking into that for a potential customer, but I found it all very clunky, the way that the setup worked, and I was a little bit surprised that it seemed to me that data consumers still need an Azure subscription, a data share resource, and a storage account. So my question really is whilst data share might be the future of sharing data, do you think it's an obstacle for non-Azure customers to consume that data?
I think currently it is, but I mean that talks to data sovereignty. So obviously for you to reach into I'm not going to mention any other vendor's name in the interest of loyalty, but let's say you're with a different cloud vendor that have a specific sort of blob storage or sort of Hadoop environment to govern that specific your consumer's data set that's outside of Azure is probably going to be a challenge. So I think it will get better, and I think it will get more streamlined as it matures and it grows. But currently, that is a barrier to entry, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay, back to Azure then. The streaming analytics, the analysis of the streams, it connects to IoT, event hubs, I guess Cosmos DB live streams. But how does it relate to the stream analytics on-prem solutions for stream analytics, like reactive extensions for C#? I'm
not 100% sure that I know the answer there. So let me answer the second part of that first. So how does it compare to Stream Analytics Workspace? So it is literally the same component. It's just it's all APIs. So you're bound to the same stream units, sort of sizing and that sort of thing. The reason why it's been integrated in Synapse Analytics is obviously to sort of get rid of the traditional Lambda hot-cold path problems and it's a way of solving the some of the Lambda architecture challenges. Yeah, that's literally it. When you look at the actual stream analytics jobs, they're virtually identical.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. The first part, I'm not too sure how to answer that question.
But it relates the same way as Stream Analytics relates to them, because it's the same service. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, it's the same
Good.
API endpoints.
Okay, so next question. The first is SQL Serverless in Synapse. Is that still in preview? And the second part to the question is do you think it's going to become a big driver to adoption from a cost perspective?
I think so. So let's answer the preview function first. So yes, SQL on demand. So the whole studio and the SQL on demand nodes is still in preview. That is going to become general availability with our Gen 3 GA release this year. It's scheduled for this year, for December. I can't give specific dates or details because it's largely protected by our program team and the engineering team, and they don't share anything. So I can't give any specifics. The only thing I know is that it is scheduled to go GA in Q4 fiscal year 2020. So it should be in December. If your workloads are unknown, so yeah, everything in Synapse, be it provision pools, or be it on demand, they're all sort of related to compute cost. So obviously with the on demand, you get charged per terabyte scanned versus obviously uptime of the compute. So you'll find that from an exploration and sort of a labbing perspective, on demand is obviously more cost effective because you don't need to provision any clusters or you don't need to provision any Spark pools and pay for them on an ongoing basis. So if you're running for a couple of hours throughout the day and you run minimal, let's say you touch maybe 2 terabytes of data throughout that exercise, it's a lot easier to pay $5 or $10 for that than to pay for a whole day's worth of compute over 1,000 data warehouse units. So it's all scenario based. It's all based on what the data engineering or data exploration pattern is.
Great stuff.
When you see the Synapse Analytics creation things in your Azure portal, we have Synapse Workspaces preview, we have Synapse Private Link Hubs preview, and we have the normal, formerly known as SQL DW server. Yes. Will they converge? Does it matter which one you choose if you're only using the normal bread and butter stuff that exists in both?
So from a Synapse Analytics, formerly SQL data warehouse, so that is going to converge. So that will, when Synapse Analytics Workspaces go general availability and we go Gen 3 of Synapse Analytics, then that will, they will converge. In terms of the other product you said was the link, the
Private Link Hubs.
Yeah, I think Private Link Hubs will not converge per se as a. I don't think it will be integrated into the actual workspace or the studio. I think it will still remain as a separate product, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I can take that one away, and if you want to publish the answer later, you can.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question by Damien. Can you do joins in SQL on demand?
You can. ANSI joins are supported.
Great stuff.
Sonal is asking, is Azure Datashare meant to be used for POC and discovery work? And if so, will there be additional storage as well as compute costs associated with it?
So there's obviously the provisioning cost with Datashare. So storage, there's a storage charge obviously because you're federating your data out into different storage or different storage account, right? So I think that the primary, if you look at it from a commercial or product perspective, I think it's meant to, or the primary use case is where you're federating your data, so you're a data provider, for instance, and you need to provide data to different organizations. So if you're an industry health data provider that provides some specific research data, then you would obviously want to be able to securely bill your customers for this and share it out and sort of track where the data goes. Hence why the whole chargeback model at the end of the value. So I think it's predominantly meant for data organizations that want to federate their data and resell their data.
I think as well, if the schedule is quite frequent, you're probably increasing your egress costs as a provider, ingress costs aren't as a
oh yes. Yeah,
okay.
Of course. Of course.
Okay. Yeah. All right, moving on. So you kind of touched on this already, but with the CDM support, presumably this means tighter analytics integration with Dynamics 365 datasets.
Not necessarily. So yes and no. So CDM is its own product in its own right. It is not. There's a. I guess because of the ERP world and the Dynamics world, that's pretty much where the common data model got born out of. But with the acquisition of the industry data workbench, that the agenda has changed somewhat. So it is the purpose of CDM is to be its own entity or its own product line that provides a common data model and meta store of all your data assets. Right. So I'm not a CDM product expert. Just it's not what I focus on, but it is not. There's a common misconception that it will be tied or always tied together with the Dynamics sort of suite of products.
Okay, so that acquisition, that's not the same thing as ADRM software, is it? Because I think Microsoft recently acquired them.
Yes, so Industry Data Workbench is the vertical industry models. So the whole financial sector, energy sector. So there's that whole. I can't recite how many different verticals are covered and how many objects, but it's literally it's a data model in a black box or an open data model as a product or data models as a product.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. For the purposes of this call, then, so that's adrm.com if people are interested.
So the distributed SQL engine in Synapse, where you run parallel queries on the default cluster or on your own setup SQL cluster, will you be able to tell us anything about could it hypothetically be rolled into other editions of SQL in Azure or outside?
Sorry, what do you mean? The MPP engine?
Will we get the possibility to use this Polaris, the distributed SQL engine, to run in other editions like managed instance or SQL or even SQL on premises?
I don't know. I wouldn't think so, and the reason. So I don't think so. I don't think that the MPP engine would ever be ported into on-prem SQL Server. I don't think that's a feature that would come because they're very different. Yeah, from a product perspective, they're different. They have different alignment.
Yep. Thanks.
So I saw on one of your slides that there's good integration with third-party products such as Informatica, but I wonder if you're able to tell us about any of the native data virtualization solutions either in Synapse or coming in Synapse if you're allowed to.
I'm going to be Mr. Teflon and I'll say I can neither confirm nor deny anything.
Right, okay then.
Right.
So hopefully you can answer this
one. But nice try, by the way.
If you have, for instance, a SQL Server managed instance or Azure SQL database, can you link that into your Synapse workspace and use that as a regular database?
Correct. So you'll be able to set up. It currently is limited. So if we go to the workspace, so you're supposed to be able to. If we go here and into linked services, so you should be able to set up a linked service with connectivity into your if it's your managed instance or your SQL Azure SQL database, and then be able to run on-demand queries against it. That is the idea. It should then appear up here sorry, slow. This workspace is hosted elsewhere, but yeah, you should then be able to connect to it as a linked service here and be able to run queries out of it.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, so you're probably going to have a similar response to this one. So the Synapse pipelines do not currently have a one-to-one parity with ADF, but I wonder if you are able to talk about the up-and-coming functionality without breaking NDA.
Yeah.
Do you foresee that sometime in the future that there will be parity, or as much parity as possible?
It will, but there again, ADF is not going to be deprecated, so it's not like you're going to be forced to create a workspace to work with data flow or data pipelines, or do the orchestration part. So obviously the ideal is similar to what happened with SQL on Linux, to be able to have a common code base. And this is, if you think about your functionality, it's all API endpoints in the end. So and that's the drive. The drive is to get parity between the products and have a common code base for them. But there's obviously things that are missing at the moment, like source control integration is a big one. And I get asked about that all the time. When am I going to be able to connect to my DevOps instance or my Git libraries or Git
repo? Data flows and wrangling flows, I think, are also missing, aren't they, right now?
Yes, they are. Data flows are there, but the wrangling ones aren't. So you don't get that nice wizard when you create a new flow ask you if you want to do data flow wrangling. But data flows exist.
Cool.
So Sonal has another question, and that is kind of connecting to the integration of managed instances. Can you access Azure Marketplace from inside Synapse? That was a good one, huh?
That is a good one, actually. I haven't really thought about that. So I've, from a pipeline perspective, I'm no, I don't know. I don't even know if that is how that's going to integrate.
So let's elaborate a bit. Isn't the marketplace data sets, for instance, accessible by REST APIs somehow?
Yes, I'm sure, but that would obviously. I mean, they should, anything that's accessible through like a Power BI marketplace, or Azure work, as a Power BI asset would obviously be available, because that you could build your connect your data assets through Power BI and do that. But as far as other marketplace integration, I don't know what's on the roadmap. I don't know. I can't really answer that question.
So we have to try.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
There you go. That's homework.
Great. Obviously, if you have a REST, anything accessible as a REST endpoint, then you could always do that as a source in a data flow. So, make a REST call.
Because Synapse is using open source version of Spark, what limitations will this have when compared against Databricks implementation?
Right. So I get asked this sort of question quite often. It's formulated in one of many ways. What is the performance going to look like down the road with Spark? And the truth is that Microsoft is committed to the open source project, and it's as far as I understand, it's going to be that way. So we're not, Databricks, they do proprietary data engines like the Photon engine and proprietary integration. So we're not going to go down that route, as far as I understand. And at this point in time, Databricks is a tier 1 partner. They're available through Nate. They're an extension of us, or we see them as an extension of us, and we're not going to compete with them at all. It's different use cases. So from a performance perspective, obviously there will be things that that from a feature set that will get better with parity with like which Spark version we're running. So that's obviously from a feature set perspective, we're trying to get parity with, but we're not competing with them. The use cases are very different,
Yeah. So I at this moment in time, I have a real problem trying to understand when I should implement a Synapse solution over to implementing a Databricks solution. You kind of indicated there is a use case for both. What would you advise me to when to go to each?
So if you require GPU heavy machine learning models, so you run something that needs to run on GPU heavy workloads, and you'd like to run that in your Databricks notebooks, then you should keep those workloads there. If you need a general purpose machine learning models, then I would run them in Synapse. It is a bit more cost effective, and also you got a common meta store as well, so there's some other benefits to it. Unless you're, and even this is, no, I'm not going to say that because that's a false statement. We are, there might be the whole data, whether or not you're building everything on data lake, so you're sort of trying to break that Lambda pattern, but that is not a valid reason either to run Databricks.
Right.
Okay. Yep. So we had actually one last second query coming in here from Rajesh, and that is, what role does the Delta Lake play in Synapse?
So we are, actually, I wonder if I can show this. I'm going to try to quickly show it. So obviously Delta Lake is driven by Databricks predominantly. However, we do support sort of the Delta Lake concept. There are things that we might not support fully, or it might not be as seamless, but we're looking definitely at getting. So currently, we do support sort of an alpha version of Delta Lake. So it's not, it's not production ready, so to speak. But again, it's preview functionality. But the idea is that we need to be able to support the Delta Lake concept.
Perfect. Thanks.
Great stuff. So the last thing that leaves me to do is just to say thank you very much, Andreas, for your session. It was really, really good. Really enjoyed myself, and we hope to see you again sometime soon.
Excellent. Thank you very much, and it's been great to attending.